Hey everyone, we're here with Larry. He's the founder CEO of New Internet Labs. He'll be doing a talk on user protection on the DeFi web. Once he starts talking, can you guys confirm in the chat that you can hear him? Thanks.
Hi everybody, thanks for joining me today. Thanks for the introduction. Again, my name is Larry Celebra. I'm the founder of New Internet Labs. We're a startup based here in Hong Kong. We're building a new browser using Stacks technology. Previously, I was at Blockstack PBC. I was one of the early hires, product engineering hire, and I developed a lot of the user-facing tools that are used both by users and developers. I'm also co-founder of the Bitcoin Association in Hong Kong. So we've built one of the sort of the biggest and most vibrant Bitcoin communities around the world. Really great relationship with the rest of the crypto space. So that's really exciting, really proud of that as well too. Today, we're going to talk about trust minimization, and then we're going to talk about the trust footprint of the web, and then look at how that compares to the trust footprint of the DeFi ecosystem. Then we're going to look at some common attacks, sort of the way users get attacked or they get harmed in DeFi, and some potential ways that we can defend against these attacks. So I really like this quote from Nick Szabo. He talks about in this quote what the purpose of decentralization is. So we talk about DeFi, we talk about decentralized finance, we talk about decentralized web apps, technology. What we really want to do is we really want to use these techniques and this technology to minimize trust. And we want to minimize trust because it gives us sort of more certainty over the systems that we use and the world in what we live. So you can think of trust minimization actually as simplification. When you use a system and you put value in that system, you have to think about what the ways are that that system could be attacked. Is it regulated by perhaps a government you don't like? Is it controlled by someone that's looking to sort of just make some short-term gain from your funds? They're not really in it for the long haul to bring a trustworthy brand. Are they trying to maximize ad revenue? Lots of different things. And the more individuals, companies, pieces of technologies that are involved in a product that you use, the more things you have to think about with regards to who you're trusting. So if we can simplify that so that you're really only interacting with a couple known pieces of technology, or perhaps you're not interacting with any organizations, you're just interacting with some code that's been audited and sort of over time has built up a reputation of being trustworthy, then that simplified model makes it easier for you to understand the risks you're taking with your funds and with your personal information. So if we look at the current web sort of doesn't really behave like users would think. Users expect they enter an address into their web browser, whether it be accounting software or the latest sort of DeFi yield farming application, and they expect that they're really interacting with that one application. But really the web, a lot of the power of the web comes from its composability. And what composability means, it means I can basically like copy other people's code that's running on their servers into my app, and it makes it perhaps a little bit faster for me to develop. But the downside is that when users use my app, all of these other third parties get notified that they're using it. They may often have access to the data the users are entering into the app. They know where the user is. They can track them across devices. Business models, billion-dollar industries have built up around sort of this data that leaks out of our current web when we use applications. So when we load a website, we're actually trusting a dozen different organizations, perhaps more. We trust the whole stack of organizations that run the domain name system. all the way from the U.S. government, which chartered ICANN, the people that sell the top level domain names, the .coms, the .casa, the .blogs, and then they sell those to domain name registers, which then can choose to sell names to end users via domain registers. And any of these people in the stack, including the ISPs that you use, or the Wi-Fi networks that you're connected to, that sort of tell you what these names point to, they're all in a position to sort of change that information, to censor that information, or to collect data on how those names are used, who's visiting what site, what users are doing on the web. We're also trusting the certificates that put the little lock on our browser, the HTTPS or the TLS certificates, and these are issued by dozens of sort of companies and governments, many of which you probably never have heard of, and your browser is set up to trust these companies. So if one of them says, "Hey, this server you're connecting to is google.com," you're just trusting them. There's not really a way for you to independently verify that, and that's sort of an easy path for someone with power over those companies or an insider to sort of like have access to your data. We're also trusting the people in the current web. We're trusting not only the code that was written by the app developer, but also sort of their entire organization, org structure. Whoever has access to the servers, whoever has access to commit code, and we're trusting a bunch of third parties when developers choose to link in libraries from various CDNs, or they try to use plugins, or they use libraries that sort of speed up their development. So these are all sort of like threat models. And often when these developers use these libraries, they include them from a third-party registry, which is really just another website that has all these same problems. So that really the effect sort of compounds. So we're really trusting perhaps 100 or more different entities when we load a common web app. And today's DeFi really is built mostly on the web. It's a combination of the web with sort of smart contracts added on top of that. And so it really just takes our current problem with the web and the sort of the complexity and the inability to reason about who we're trusting, and sort of knocks it up a notch. So if you look at this hypothetical DeFi app at Uniswap, you see that like not only are you trusting all the things that we were just talking about in the current web, you also have to trust sort of this wallet extension that you've entered your private key in and used to control your funds and your tokens. And we're trusting this contract that is probably just may have just been launched yesterday, or maybe an update was just launched, and it wasn't audited, but we want to get that really great yield. So we're going to just try our luck and see what happens. That's running on the so-called Ethereum world computer, where sort of the founder envisioned a world where everybody's apps run on everybody else's computer. So it's sort of been really hard to scale. And so because of that, your wallet extension and your supposedly decentralized finance app are really all just trusting sort of a tech founder who lives in Brooklyn's server infrastructure running in AWS. So really, you're just taking the current web and you're instead of trusting the things that you were trusting before, you're really adding a bunch more untrusted elements into that and really increasing your risk. So really have like a massive attack surface with the DeFi in its current state. Besides technology, though, there's also this question of social trust. And social trust is sort of like a bunch of different things. It's this trust in like the word that I'm using to talk about an app or a token, this trust that other people are also talking about the same thing. So really, to look at an example of that, we can look at how Bitcoin evolved. So we started out with Bitcoin, and along the way, we had disagreements over parameters of the protocol, sort of its use case and its direction, and people made different forks. We have Bitcoin XT, Bitcoin Cash, Bitcoin SV, Bitcoin Gold. There's dozens of them. And so when these forks happen and changes to the rules get made, we have to sort of come to consensus on a sort of a verbal level or sort of a social level that the thing that we were calling Ethereum, is that still the same Ethereum we were using yesterday, or is it now playing by different rules? We also have the sort of the trust when we have governance mechanisms, that these governance mechanisms aren't going to sort of just arbitrarily change the rules of the game in a way that benefit sort of the majority of the stakers or the token holders. So you need to think, are you playing by the rules that you think you're playing by? The rules yesterday the same as the rules today? And is someone else controlling the rules? I'm not sure why I'm getting a blank slide every other slide. It seems to be a Crowdcast bug. So let's take a look at how users get wrecked. Number one way users get wrecked is they lose their own coins. If you are new to crypto and you haven't lost your own coins, get ready. It's going to happen to you one day. So this is from a tweet thread that I think was on Twitter yesterday, but somebody talking about how this poor person, after they actually put all of their money in Mt. Gox and lost a bunch of Bitcoin, but then later on, again, their girlfriend threw away treasure containing lots and lots of Ethereum. And this is very common. Like, I mean, to the point where it's happened to me. I've lost crypto. I was traveling with an early Bitcoin entrepreneur once, and at the end of our trip, we were settling up our accounts, and he owed me some Bitcoin. I think it was around $70 at the time. I made a new wallet because I had been presenting on a screen using the private key of the wallet that I currently had in my phone. He sent me the coins. I forgot to back up the seed phrase. The wallet was gone when I restored my phone. That was worth a lot more money now. And we try to think about that. So the number one way you're going to lose your money in DeFi is probably you're going to lose your own coin somehow. Number two way is you're going to gamble away all of your coins. So you're gonna get greedy. You're gonna make some money. You're gonna say, oh wow, I made 100x. I found 100 bagger. I'm gonna do it again. Let's try some leverage perhaps, and you're gonna get wrecked. And your coins are gonna be gone. So this is the number two way that people really get attacked in DeFi. They attack themselves. So DeFi, in DeFi, we sort of move. We try to protect ourselves by having self-custody of our funds. But when we hold our own funds, DeFi can't protect us against ourselves. So we have to understand when we're taking sort of risky behavior and try to avoid that. What it will do, though, is it will sort of protect you against losing your coins in the sort of the classic exchange hack. So that exchange hack could be something like Mt. Gox, where inexplicably the coins are gone, or it could be something like the founder of the exchange who has the only private key getting arrested and being unable to let you withdraw funds. It's really no different from a user perspective. One of the great benefits of DeFi is that risk, that counterparty risk, can be minimized. Instead, though, we have to worry about smart contract bugs. These are sort of the new exchange hacks, and that's where we've tied up our funds inside of a smart contract. So really, we no longer have control over our funds. Our funds are subject to rules that are outside of our control, and those rules are just software code, and that software code is complex and needs a lot of time and a lot of a lot of eyes on it to make sure all the bugs have removed. And so when we put our money into smart contracts that are not audited, it's very easy to lose money. Happens time and time again. Biggest one in the beginning was probably the DAO, and then we just over the past half year we've seen a lot of examples of this. So how can we build a world of DeFi where centralized apps, centralized finance apps, and can't be evil. Well, I think what we can do is, from a high-level perspective, we can try to simplify the system in a way that makes it easier to reason about, and in a way that will increase security. So if we look back again at how DeFi looks today, it's very complicated. There are lots of different attack vectors. It's very hard to reason about. And what we'd like to see, though, is a world with centralized finance where the things we have to think about are very small. The attack surface is very small. We'd like to just really have to trust the code that actually provides the functionality that we need. So the code that's coming from a developer, or perhaps a developer made and has been audited and used for a long time by the community, and a blockchain sort of node that we control or we're able to connect to in a way where we don't have to trust it. We really don't want to have to be thinking about a bunch of third parties that we can't see, we don't know, and we have no way to audit. So how can we do this? We can take the current DeFi Web and we can use some of the technology that we developed at Blockstack, Blockstack name system, Clarity contracts, Gaia storage. And on top of that, we can add a new security model, which is something that we're developing here at New Internet Labs. We call that the Can't Be Evil sandbox. And it takes the current system of trying to block things that we don't like, which is commonly called a blacklist, and we get rid of that, and we use an approved list or a whitelist instead, where we only let in things that we need to use. And so we shipped Can't Be Evil Sandbox version 1 earlier this year as part of Blockstack's app mining program. Had about 300 different developers trying that out. And in that sandbox, there were no cookies and no third-party assets allowed. So that really reduced the surface area of attack for web apps. But it allowed programmatic connections. So developers could connect any server they want. But in version 2, programmatic connections will no longer be allowed, and connections will only be allowed when they're asking users for permission. So we're really excited about that, and we're hoping that will be another step toward a trust minimized, user-centric by design, general purpose computing platform that'll be great for DeFi and give us a world where we can build centralized finance applications that are easier to reason about, safe for users. So we can use name systems like BNS to cryptographically verify that the users are getting these software that they expect. They can check, they can do a name lookup on a name that's registered in the blockchain, and understand and be sure the software they're receiving from that name is the software that the developer published. It hasn't been modified by anything in the stack, by TLS providers, by man-in-the-middle certificates, by data infrastructure providers, and they're using the software they assume they're using. Another thing that we can do is we can make it safer and easier to use key management. And there are some great solutions out there right now for Bitcoin. My favorite is Casa. Makes it really easy to sort of store your Bitcoin in a secure way. I think there's a lot of room to develop similar solutions that apply across a range of tokens, and that easily integrate into and work with decentralized finance applications. But it's important to keep in mind that technology can't protect users from their own bad decisions. If you're sort of like caught up in a wave of sort of speculation or a bull market where new apps are being launched, new tokens and new ways that appear to let you make easy money sort of day after day, and that software hasn't been used, it doesn't develop a reputation, you don't know who's developing it, and you put a bunch of money into that hoping that you're going to get rich quick, there's really no technology that can protect you from that bad decision. If you decide that, hey, you're not going to try out your storage procedures for your keys, your key backup mechanisms, your recovery procedures. You're just going to be like, hey, it's probably going to work when I need it. And you find out, hey, you need to recover your access to your crypto. You find out your system doesn't work. We can't really help you with that. That's something that users are going to have to learn over time with behavior changes. And I think as the ecosystem matures, users will also mature. They'll take more responsibility for their money. Those that don't will lose it. So there'll be a really strong incentive to change behavior. And more responsible investors are going to be great for the ecosystem. They're going to be better for the world as we have people taking responsibility for their financial decisions, and sort of not like expecting others to custody their funds or take responsibility for their bad investment mistakes. So I'm really excited for that future. And if you're interested in following along with our work, please keep in touch. My email is on the slide. You can follow me on Twitter at LarryCelebra, or sign up at newyinternetlabs.com to get notified about the new projects that we're working on. Thank you very much. Love to take your questions.
All right, so if there are any last questions, please just drop in the chat. Otherwise, Larry, you can answer the questions verbally.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry, I'm a Cardcast noob.
And there's also a question in Ask a Question at the bottom.
Oh, I see that. Okay, let's do that first. Do I have advice on storing private keys? It's really hard to get good advice on storing private keys. I can share a link that somebody wrote. I'm not sure how the fastest way to find that is. But I mean, if I actually spend a lot of time asking friends in the crypto space like what they do, but like because people don't really want to talk about how they store their private keys, it's really hard to get information out of people, which is really kind of frustrating. And I get, like, part of the reason I think that people are quiet about it is because they're actually not really storing it very, very well. Like they're what you really want to probably do is, if you're using Bitcoin, you want to do something with multi-sig. I really like Casa Solution, and just the way it works is you either have 3 private keys or you have 5 private keys, they hold one of them. So if you lose 1 or 2 of your keys, you're still fine because you can sort of ask them to sign your transaction. But like the sort of the thing that helped me was there's always the problem with hardware wallets. Like, right, you have this hardware wallet and it comes with a little piece of paper where you're supposed to write down your private key, but they don't tell you where to put that piece of paper. So what do you do with it? So, if you just, like, you're like me, you don't own your own house, right? So you can't like go dig a hole in the backyard. You don't have a backyard. You can't store it there. So you're stuck storing it someplace that like isn't yours, like either an apartment you rent or somewhere else, right? So that's really dangerous, because you really your security of that hardware key is dependent entirely on the security of the private key that you've written down. So Casa's approach is you just don't write down the private key of your hardware key. You initialize it and you forget the to keep a number of them physically safe, and you can spread those out, but you don't have to worry about, like, if someone steals them, as long as they don't have the PIN, they can't access the key. So it's a really, really elegant solution. So I'd like to see something like that for other tokens. So there's a lot of questions from buddy Brad about why I hate Android. I don't hate Android. I just am a sort of a strong believer in building things that I'll use. And so I don't use Android regularly. I have developed Android in the past. I just don't. I mean, I have an Android phone, but I can only use one phone at a time. I choose to use iPhone. I think privacy is a bit better. Not a big fan of permissioned access, but really both platforms have that problem. So yeah, just build things that I'll use myself. Any other questions? So I'm going to share a link to a podcast with a friend, my friend Mike Flaxman, who is I would say one of the foremost people on Bitcoin security. He's thought about it a lot. So if you want to learn more about that, you can listen to his podcast. Do you see a space for government policies in Web3 or DeFi? Maybe guide governments toward policies that can regulate towards CB values. I mean, I think that there's definitely if Web3 or DeFi grows to the point where it's economically significant, I think the governments are going to try to regulate it like everything else. I think ultimately it becomes really complicated because there are more than one government, and people want to ship apps across borders, and ultimately, I think the solution is going to be privacy and anonymity. You really want to be able to have privacy for your money and for your finance. For whatever reason, it's actually really, really interesting, and I plan to write about this at some point. But if you look at the history of financial privacy, like it really was recently sort of this idea of like we need to trace what everybody's doing with their money is very recent in the past few decades, and it was led by the US. It's a very much US-led attack on financial privacy. So these concepts of money laundering and things about tracking financial transactions all come from the United States the past several decades. Before that, there was a lot more financial privacy. So if you're interested in that, follow me on Twitter, and when I write about that, I'll tweet out a link and you can read more about my thoughts on that. Any other questions? Questions above from Harold. Why is cost solutions having been developed for other chains in your opinion? I think one reason cost of solution was just Bitcoin only is that like technology on other chains is very poor, and that's part of the reason that Stacks and Blockstack on the Stacks chain we're building on top of Bitcoin, because it's really hard to get security and decentralization right, and Bitcoin is really the only one that's done it right now. So I think that's why we haven't seen other secure solutions on other chains. If you have any other questions, you can tweet at me on Twitter or send me an email, and I'll be happy to answer them. I think we're running out of time.
Hey, Larry, I think we're good. So we're going to transition to the next session now, if everything is good. So yeah, just thank you so much for this talk. It was great.
Thanks so much for having me. Thanks.